back, and we're now starting with Proposition 23. This is the one that deals with repeal of AB 32. And before I get lost here in some of the numbers, why don't I turn it over to you, Tim. Tell us a little bit about what Proposition 23 does.
Well, this is the one that voters will be probably hearing the most about. It's generating a lot of contributions from each side. People feel very passionately about this. Business interests on both sides are affected by the outcome. In 2002, the state of California, no, actually it was in 2006, the state of California passed AB 32, which was the first measure in the country that where a state was really taking a lead in trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, those gases that are associated with global warming. And that is now being implemented, and the goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions back to 1990 levels by 2020.
So what this does is actually totally repeal that or only suspend?
Well, the verbiage in the language says suspend. It suspends until such time as the state's unemployment rate is at 5.5% or lower for 4 consecutive quarters. As it happens, that's only happened 3 times in the last 40 years. I don't think any serious economist is projecting that the unemployment rate will get down that low again for quite some time in the future. So I mean, you could make a good argument that this doesn't really suspend AB 32. It basically wipes it off the book.
One of the arguments for Proposition 23, though, is that the sense it's a bit of a job killer, that because industry will have to go and put in these pollution controls, it'll really hurt California industry, perhaps those companies will move away. How do the no on 23 people respond?
Well, the economic arguments, I have seen more studies on this very question than on any issue in recent history, and economists disagree because for every job lost in the fossil fuels industry, there might be a job gained in renewable energy or energy efficiency jobs. It's basically those who are urging a no vote on Proposition 23 say this is a job killer also. I mean, the job killer argument cuts both ways. It's we've got this vibrant, emerging, growing sector, the clean energy sector, and this would cut it off at its knees, is their argument.
Now, the yes on 23 people obviously disagree, and they are, as you mentioned, getting funds in from many types of sources. Let's talk about the funding, because it seems somewhat balanced almost right now. Maybe not quite balanced, but there's money coming into both sides.
Right. Well, at this point, the bulk of the money in support of Proposition 23 is coming from a handful of oil companies based out of state. Interestingly, the Chevron, the state's biggest in-state oil company, is sitting on the sidelines. But Valero and others have contributed, I don't know what it's up to, $8–9 million collectively to try to pass this measure. And clearly, they would be the ones, I mean, Valero operates a couple of huge refineries in California, and oil refineries would be the ones who would probably be most directly hit negatively economically by implementation of AB 32.
Are there any supporters for or against that are a bit of surprise? I know that with the Prop 23, supporters include the Taxpayers Association, one of them.
Well, those who are against Prop 23 there are a lot of business interests, the new economy business interests, the folks in the Silicon Valley, all those in the green tech industry, and putting their money where their mouth is. You're seeing some very sizable contributions from people who are largely investment capitalists who are investing in green tech companies and trying to look for some opportunities there. They're the ones who are contributing heavily to the no campaign.
So that's interesting. Even those companies are probably affected by AB 32 and have to adjust their own things, but they see that it makes sense to oppose Prop 23.
Yeah, there's no question there will be economic effects. I mean, on both sides. The question is, what will be the net economic effect? I mean, energy prices will go up in California, but will that then generate efficiencies and counter strategies that would reduce the total amount of energy used, so that maybe we're paying a little bit more per unit, but we're using fewer units, and the price balances out. And, there will probably be jobs lost in manufacturing industries that are heavily reliant on energy. There will clearly be jobs gained in solar, wind, biomass, electric cars, these retrofits to improve efficiency. So it's the most difficult question. Even the learned legislative analyst who tries to play this as close to the vest as possible says we just can't. Given all the uncertainties involved, the net economic impact remains a matter of debate. That's the best they could come up with.
And to wrap it up, I believe the Governor Schwarzenegger is actually opposed to Proposition 23.
Governor Schwarzenegger, who signed that bill and considers it one of his landmark accomplishments, is very strongly opposed to this.
It's an interesting bill. All right, let's move on. We have a few minutes to talk about Proposition 24. This is one that repeals a business tax. I think it sort of gets a little lost in the language here. Maybe you can simplify it for our viewers.
Well, in the last two budget agreements that the state has made in 2008 and 2009, in the negotiations to try to come up with the 2/3 vote, which we'll talk about later, there's give and take involved, and the Republican legislators who gave the votes needed to put those agreements over the top said, well, we want some incentives for business, some tax breaks for businesses, because we feel these will help business and help create jobs and help the economy. There are three separate tax breaks put in for corporate and business interests as part of those two agreements, and Proposition 24 would repeal all three of those, worth a collective $1.3 billion a year.
Now, those who support those accommodations to business, those cuts, feel that this will be hurting jobs. It's sort of rolling back the clock, if you will, on helping to spur industry. How does the supporters of Prop 24 counter those arguments?
Well, I think in the first place, none of these tax breaks have yet gone into effect.
Oh, I see.
So essentially, this doesn't change anything. No business has realized the tax savings from any of these actions yet, so it really would just maintain the status quo. So I guess the argument is then speculative going forward what these changes might have in terms of job creation. And the other thing is that the data from the Franchise Tax Board shows clearly that the biggest of the three is it changes how multinational, multi-state corporations determine how much of their profits that are liable to pay California business taxes on. And so the benefit is concentrated in a few very big firms that have a lot of business all over the world, all over the country, and this gives them a way to take their choice between two formulas, and they can choose the one that gives them the least tax liability in California.
We have about 15, 20 seconds left. How much money are we talking about?
$1.3 billion a year.
So that's, if this passes, then we'll need to make up another 1.3 in our deficits every
That's
year.
correct. It's a matter of fact, the
interesting
current budget that's one of the points of contention right now.
Guess we'll be learning more about Proposition 24 as we go on. That wraps up Proposition 24.